Hello, I am here today with a very special guest at Tolarian Community College. Literally, the creator of EDH himself, Sheldon Menery. But you didn't just create EDH. You have worked to popularize it over the years, and you also maintain and, to a certain extent, control it, at least in regards to what is banned, what is not banned, what is allowed. Is that fair to say? What is not allowed?
That's reasonably fair to say, sure.
And you've come here today to allow me, in your own words, to put your feet to the fire with this interview.
Yep.
All right. And also, you are going to be at the Magic Summit, as will I, which is a celebration of 30 years of Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, I will be at the Magic Summit. As a matter of fact, I think it was one of the early guests that they reached out to, and when they told me Brandon Sanderson was going to be there.
Pretty big, but there's a lot of people coming to Magic Summit, and I'm really excited for it because MTG Summit is an event like no other, being held November 11th through the 13th in Salt Lake City, Utah. And it's not just featuring myself and Sheldon, but tons upon tons of your favorite Magic the Gathering creators, players, community figures and leaders, and also Vince. You might win a chance to draft with the pros or play archenemy with Sheldon. But don't let this giant parasocial guest list fool you. This is an event about playing Magic the Gathering, something you'll be able to do whenever and however you want. There's going to be a Pioneer 5K, a Modern 5K, a Legacy 5K, a sealed pre-release 5K, and of course, you can play all the Commander you want across all power levels. So whether your deck is a level 7 or a level 7 or even a level 7, you'll be able to find other people with level 7 decks to get into lively arguments about what makes a deck a level 7. And I'll of course include links to the event in this video's description, whether you're celebrating 30 years of Magic the Gathering at MTG Summit or just with friends at home, playing Commander at your local game store. I hope very much you get some good games. Now, Sheldon, like we said at the beginning, you didn't just create EDH. And I guess I should actually start with this. Thank you for creating EDH. It's
welcome.
Really fun.
It is. I'm glad that a lot of people like it. We didn't set out to conquer the world.
Right. Or at least Magic the Gathering. But
here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah.
So, but you didn't just create it, because like there's a lot of things where it's like, oh, here's the person who created this format, and then it went on to have a life without them, or perhaps not much of one, but you maintained it. Mm-hmm. You are in charge of what's called the Rules Committee. Or you're not in charge of the Rules Committee.
I think...
What is the Rules Committee?
I think first among equals, maybe...
What is the Rules Committee, and what's its relationship to Commander?
So the Rules Committee is the body that maintains and develops the philosophy of Commander and the rules, of which the ban list is one part. Mm-hmm. I think people get into the idea that the only thing that there is to managing a format is banning and unbanning cards, but there's way more to it than that. At least in Commander, right? It's about a philosophy. It's about an outlook. I mean, we're the only format with a philosophy document.
That's very interesting, actually.
I think we're the only format with a conscience, right? So the six of us, since we've just added Olivia and Jim, put together the vision for taking Commander into the future.
Okay, so I do want to touch first on bans, because you said that you have your philosophy document, and you are one of the voices of that Commander philosophy. But why do we need bans at all in Commander? Commander's a casual format that I do not play and competitively, I guess, unless it's CEDH, but I'm not going down to GP Commander.
Sure.
I'm playing with friends in my living room most of the time. I'm playing with people in between rounds at my local game store or at Casual Commander Night, which usually is a free event at the local game store where you're just having a slice of pizza, a soda pop, meeting new friends, playing Commander. Why do we need an official ban list? This is not a competition.
Sure, but Commander needs, or format needs a structure in order to be a format. You can't, if you're just, well, we're going to play it whatever by whatever rules, then you're not playing Commander, you're just playing Magic.
Right.
Right? So one of the reasons that you need a structure is so that you don't have to recreate the discussion of how are we going to play tonight every time that you play. So you have guideposts of where the boundaries are, and for most people, that's the ban list. We'd like to believe from the beginning that there are exemplar bans, so not just this card, but this is sort of the worst offender, but we would like you to think about other cards like this one as well, and maybe apply them to your local group. I think for the most part, strong local groups don't need us to guide them, again, so much as just provide a baseline structure, and then they know where they're going from there, whether they're deviating or not, and that's totally up to them.
So why can't you simply maybe post a list of cards that you think people might want to avoid and leave the rest up to everyone to determine for themselves?
I mean, in effect, that's what the ban list really is, because while there's an official version of Commander, like a lot of other games, there's not only one way that it's getting played, and like there's an official version of D&D, every local group is playing something a little bit different, and I expect that that's the same way with Commander, that you have these sort of micro deviations along the way, because they do what suits the local group. But again, just having that structure provides for when players go elsewhere, that there's not a long conversation. They can relatively quickly shuffle up and play.
That's the name of a show. Is there a criteria that you use, like a specific set of conditions for if a card is ban worthy, or is each a case-by-case sort of basis?
Each is a case-by-case basis, but there's a philosophy, and we in the philosophy document, that's the landing page on mtgcommander.net, our official website. You'll see some of the reasons that cards will tend to get banned.
Okay.
It's not a checklist. It's not, oh, it meets these criteria, it has to get banned, or it doesn't, it can't be. But we put together the philosophy document and continue to modify it over time, so that it reflects the way we think that Commander needs to be today, as opposed to the way it was yesterday. But you'll see common threads in cards that get banned, and one of the ones, for example, is cards that warp or over centralize the format.
Okay.
If players feel as though they have to either play a card or be prepared to play against a card, that's the definition of format warping. Whether that was
I can think of so many cards that are not banned that meet that criteria, but go on. I'm not going to do that. But please, I'm sorry to interrupt,
Sure.
But I'm immediately just having 800 cards rushing through my head, and 8 very specific cards rushing through my head that sound like they meet that criteria.
Yeah, well, and not all of them aren't necessarily ban worthy.
Right.
Because there are other factors. We want to keep the ban list trim. We want to keep it as lean as possible, because accessibility is a thing. Like we don't want Commander to be a format that you have to be a super heavily invested player in order to play. Like, if you want to play Legacy, you can't. It's pretty hard to play Legacy casually. We want new players to be able to play Commander, as well as the heavily invested players. And sure, the heavily invested players could bear sort of a heavier burden, 10 or 20 more cards on the ban list. But we want to make sure that it's an easier on-road for the newer player as well. We certainly become, over the last several years, the primary way to get people into Magic itself.
Yes.
So I think we bear some responsibility to make sure that road is not particularly bumpy.
Okay. I do not want to just go down the ban list with you and say, why is this card banned? Why is this card
Sure.
banned? I think I probably, if I dug around, could find quite a lot of statements from either you or perhaps some other members of the RC on most of that from other sources. But I do want to do one question to maybe give people an idea of your thoughts and philosophies by asking you this. Why is Primeval Titan banned, but a card like Dockside Extortionist not banned? Why is Primeval Titan meeting that criteria, but not Dockside Extortionist?
Okay, so the first thing is we don't do why this, not that, right? We don't necessarily
here.
We don't compare cards together. Cards get judged of their own on their own merits, or demerits, and because I think if you get into the if this then that, you get this series of cascading bans, and suddenly the ban list is 125 cards, and again, we don't want that. I believe that there's an easy case to make for doubling the size of the ban list.
Sure.
Like there are cards like we could make a reasonable argument. We think they're not far enough over the borderline, and again, applying the more conservative approach of if it's not over the line, let's give it a chance. A more direct answer about those two cards is that Primeval Titan absolutely and definitely centralized games. If we're getting to the point where there are probably more commander players, there are probably orders of magnitude more commander players that never played with Primeval Titan than did. It's been long enough, it's been most of a decade that Primeval Titan has been banned. So we've exploded in growth so much that there are so many people who just never saw a day with Primeval Titan at their tables. Mm-hmm. And I think I might encourage them to play it once or twice and see what happens. Because it really, the game became about Primeval Titan.
Right.
It became about stealing it, copying it, cloning it. And if you weren't playing it or reacting to it, you felt as though you were way behind the curve. And it was everywhere. It was pervasive across all levels of the format. Mm-hmm. What we find with Dockside Extortionists currently, as you and I sit here today, is that it's overrepresented at the higher power end, but it hasn't crept down into the broader area of the format yet. Like, for example, Hullbreacher did. If Hullbreacher had just stayed at the niche end, it probably wouldn't have gotten banned, although it's pretty egregious. But it crept down so quickly into the broader scope of play, and it's not just what a card does. It's important to remember that a card gets banned not for what it does, not for its mechanical things, but what it does to the format. And Primeval Titan severely warped the entirety of the format. Dockside Extortionist might be warping a portion of the format, but not necessarily enough that we think it's appropriate to take action at the moment.
Why are you the ones who get to make that decision? Why not Wizards of the Coast? And I know that you're not the only member of the Rules Committee, but you are very much the figurehead and probably the most visible, I'm going to say the most visible member. Sure. Why are you the one who gets to decide what is banned and is not banned? Why are you the arbiter in this case and not someone else, such as either Wizards of the Coast or just another group of people, another group of 5 to 7 people?
Well, we started this thing.
Okay.
Right? I mean, I created this format out of an idea that was presented to me by one of my friends in Alaska, and they had this kernel of an idea, and I took my knowledge of Magic. I was already a high-level judge by this point. I took my knowledge of formats and Magic itself and made the corrections that it needed and the changes that it needed and additions that it needed in order to be a viable format. So when somebody said, "Well, you didn't actually create EDH," I'm like, okay, right? The basic rules set, sure, it was an idea from one person who may have gotten the idea from an Inquest magazine or a Duelist magazine article from years before, but taking it and shaping it into something is creating the format. So then after that, and that was me and Gavin Duggan, who is still on the rules committee, created the rules committee. The format had gotten popular enough where he came to me one day in 2006 and was like, "We're playing this a lot at the Pro Tour. We should formalize it and have a website or something." So right then and there, we formed the RC, and there have been other members who have fallen off since. We added Toby Elliott in 2007, Scott Larrabee in 2008, and of course, Olivier Gobert-Hicks, Jim Lepage this year to the RC. But the reason we get to decide is because it's the thing that we created this thing. So,
Right.
So I don't want to say, because it would sound terrible to say it's ours, but
I would hope not.
because we wouldn't be here without everybody else.
Right.
Right. But we were the ones that formalized it, and our friends at Wizards of the Coast were like, "Great, a fan-run format that people love, and have at it."
One might say you sure made Wizards of the Coast a lot of money.
Sure.
Another might say, do they give you any money?
That's between me and them.
Getting back to that original question, how are you able, though, to define what is good for the format? Because this is such a subjective concept.
Absolutely.
How can this group of, was it 7 people?
6.
How can this group of 6 people define what is good for Commander?
Well, we have to leverage a lot of experience and intent. Like we have to some extent, we have to know what we set out to do in the beginning, and the general philosophy of Commander hasn't changed since then. We want Commander to be something that is different than other Magic formats. We want Commander. It was originally intended as it wasn't designed for, but sort of inserted into the space of a thing for players judges at the Pro Tour to wind down with, to gather socially, to have something to play where the primary thing was the gathering and not the mechanics of play. So you kind of had to pay attention but didn't have to pay attention. And sort of just be together. And that's why you'll hear me say Commander is a social format first and a mechanical one second.
Sure.
And that hasn't changed since the beginning. Okay. So what we do is, we're relatively experienced people, and we know what we have hopes for the format to be. So we take that experience and infuse it into the decisions we make.
Once you've made a decision, how can you tell that this has actually gotten you towards something that's better or good for the format versus a decision that might have not been good for the format? How is that known that what you are doing, how do you say, okay, we did a decision that is good? How do you make that determination? This is good for the format. Afterwards, you look back and it's like, how do you judge that?
We pay attention.
Okay.
Right. We listen to what the player base has to say, for one, and then we judge it for ourselves. We're like, okay, did this do what we wanted it to do? Did this have the effect that we wanted it to have? Again, it's highly subjective, and we don't have hard data metrics that we can turn back to, like a corporation might for its decision points. We don't have profit sheets for one, and that's liberating, right? We don't have any kind of fiscal concern in making decisions, and that's unique in bodies that administer things, and like that we just don't have that. We don't have that problem that a company might have. So we rely a lot on that experience and our individual judgment, and listening to what smart people and the broader community have to say.
Outside of not enough representation, which I will get to in a moment, what would you say is the biggest or one of the biggest mistakes you've ever made as the rule committee, not you personally?
Probably the biggest mistake we've made is not being more aggressive in the middle years about implementation of philosophy. Is not in the 2012 to 15-ish, like post Commander product years, but before the, I don't want to say modern because that has a meaning in Magic, but before the recent era of not being as forward about actively and positively engaging with and managing the format as it grew. I think we can't continue to look at it like it was in its infancy, the little format that could. We have to look at it in its bigger picture, but we never want to lose the connection to being the sort of grounded, again, social format that it was from the beginning.
You're not Wizards of the Coast, but Wizards of the Coast is designing hundreds, possibly thousands of cards for Commander now, and that are going to shape and influence Commander. Do you have any say in what they can and cannot do? Do you have any voice in the room, at least? What is that relationship like?
Yeah, we don't have any final say. Although we do have a kind of final say, which we can get to in a moment. But yeah, we're involved in the process, and this is part of actually what I was talking about. For those years that we weren't as involved as I think we wanted to be. I think we should have insisted that we were involved to the level that we are now. And now we generally see most sets once or twice in the design process, and actively make commentary on them, both celebrating the successes that we think they have, because I think it's important to tell designers, hey, yes, this is it. This is the right thing. It's the right direction. Or, oh God, please never print this card. And that, I will tell you that those words have happened.
Right. So you can say to them, we do not think this is a good card for Commander, about something that is yet to be printed.
Correct. And here's why, right? And
right.
We have to, again, we take that experience and some of that trust that we've used.
Did you say that about Hull Breacher?
We didn't see Hull Breacher in its final form. In fact, Hull Breacher was a late addition.
Okay.
And that, because of the way the process works, that can happen, right? If we see it sort of very early in design, then we see it shortly before it's too late to make any changes. Like, okay, here's your real last chance, and things will have changed as they do in design in those 2 points, which may be 15 or 18 months apart. Here's your last chance to make comments. It's still possible for them to make changes after that point, and we never see them. So Hull Breacher was a bit of a surprise to us too.
Okay. That's better than we saw it, we gave it the thumbs up, I guess.
Yeah.
But how confident are you that R&D or Wizards of the Coast's vision for Commander and the format matches your vision for Commander, or the rule committee's vision for a Commander?
Well, our working relationship is great. I think that we have a significant amount of overlap in that vision. Again, designers, Studio X doesn't necessarily have the sort of business end in mind. Like the designers, people go, well, they design cards so they sell money, so they sell and make money. Designers don't do that. I can tell you, designers like, I want to make cool cards, or I want to do a great job of of making this set or whatever. Business decisions get made outside of that. So we don't have we don't have any of the corporate concerns that they do. But I think we line up reasonably well today. The casual play design team and the other people that that work on Commander products and the RC have a similar enough philosophical vision that I think we're headed strongly in the same direction. We have a great relationship. Like the primary architects here are people like Gavin Verhey and Ethan Fleischer and Glenn Jones, and I think that we talk enough to them, and we have enough sort of heading in the same direction that they do, that we're confident that we're going to do things well together. And I think that there's a point we can look at from about Strixhaven forward, where Commander design philosophically has hit the sweet spot, like power level wise, has really gone from okay, let's make some generically good cards that everybody will love, to making some niche, compelling, thought-provoking cards that you have to do some work to get a lot of mileage out of. But once you do that work, you really get rewarded for it. And I like to think that there was a lot of value in the time that I spent there in late 2019 as a designer. And I didn't just design cards. I had a lot of conversations with those primary people in the building, and we talked a lot about Commander philosophically. And I think that there was a change that came out of that, because I was able to, we didn't talk as much in the years prior to that about our vision, about the RC's vision for how to move the format forward via card design, because I think the primary way to enhance the philosophy of Commander is via card design, right? It's not us pontificating about things. It's about us steering the vision of how Commander cards get designed, and saying, okay, here's where we are. Here's what we think make the best kind of Commander cards, and convincing them that we're right.
What should the Rules Committee look like, and why does the Rules Committee not better reflect the diversity of people who play Commander?
Well, ideally, the Rules Committee would look like the player base, which
does not look anything like the player base.
Which is wildly diverse. Yeah. I 100% agree with you that it doesn't. The reason it looks the way it does is because these are the people who started it. We created the RC, and again, we were not forming it for the broad audience, but we were kind of doing it for our tiny little audience, and then it expanded. And so we didn't go in with the broad, the big player base, and have the sort of necessary foresight to say, well, we need to have the ruling body reflect who's playing the game.
You think it should?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think that is desirable. I don't think it's the only criterion.
Of course, but you do think it should. When will it? How long's it been, and when will it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this certainly our current edition is a move in that direction.
You got your first woman on there.
We did, and that was an extremely important move to me. And it was also extremely important that the first woman be a highly qualified person.
Of course.
And I think one of the things that we're swimming upstream against is the fact that while the player base of Commander is diverse, the people who have been prominent in it haven't. Right? Magic itself has been less than diverse in the people whose voices have mattered. We have to work towards something, and we're already working where in a situation where we're overbalanced in a direction. So other than firing people, it's going to take a different kind of work, whether that's expanding the rules committee even further, which gets a little unwieldy, like more than 6. We talked about 7, 6. I mean, 6. Think about getting 6 people to agree to meet together at the same time.
Right.
Right. Now add 7. Now add 8 or 9, and it becomes, having a decision-making body be too big is also problematic, because it becomes a consensus decision instead of a best decision. And I strongly believe that a smaller committee is a smaller decision-making body is better. But that decision-making body has to be smart enough to listen to a broad cross-section of voices.
Right.
Which is why we have the Commander Advisory Group.
Okay. What is the, let's talk about that then. What is the Commander Advisory Group, and what's its relationship to the Rules Committee?
The Commander Advisory Group is a selection of people from across the community, initially chosen for their media outreach potential, for the most part, because we wanted to be able to both get more information in and give more information out. So the Commander Advisory Group is a collection of individuals, which is very, very important, by the way, a distinction that I'll come back to. Collection of individuals that advise us on all facets of Commander, whether it's banned, whether it's banning or unbannings, or philosophy, or our presentation, or the website, or like everything that goes into managing Commander, the CAG advises on. They're 12 individuals, and we don't want a consensus opinion from them. We want 12 opinions, and that's why there are people from not just diverse social backgrounds, but diverse Magic play backgrounds. From somebody relatively spiky, like Rachel Unruh, to somebody super casual, like our good friend Shivam Bhatt. Right? So we have voices all across the spectrum.
Okay.
We have people representing strong rules knowledge, like Charlotte, and we have people. Well, the rules knowledge, like, it's like, I know the rules, but I'm not going to pass the level 3 judge test anytime soon.
Right.
Right. So we really want them to have very, very different voices, which of course means that when a decision gets made, some of them are going to end up on the side that we made a decision that they didn't advise, and then others are.
So how much influence do they really have then?
They have a pretty significant amount of influence, because we trust them, because we listen to them. I mean, we pick them because they're super smart people, right? Sure. And they're plugged in to the format. They care about the format. They're prominent, and they can articulate their points. I don't necessarily want to go into any too many details, but they've talked us off a ledge once or twice on a couple of things.
I think sharing those details would probably be very beneficial, in my opinion, because it would show that you would have done something I'm going to just say stupid,
Mhm.
that they then prevented you from doing, which is actually a good thing to announce.
Yeah.
In my opinion, but I can't force you to share that.
Well, I think I'll be happy to come back and share once I talk to the
Of
to
course.
the other ones.
I suppose that's fair.
And you know, are you guys comfortable with me sharing this? Because, you know, even though I am the sort of spokesperson, I don't necessarily just throw everything off the hip.
So, but you were it's fair for me to say there were at least one or perhaps multiple times that the rules committee was going to do something stupid and the CAG prevented them from doing that stupid thing. I'm speaking bluntly.
We're thinking about doing this. What do you think? Yeah, you shouldn't do that. That's
Okay. So then why is there a need for the two separate groups? Why not just have the people that you have on the CAG be a part of the same group that you are in?
because a decision-making body of 18 or 20 people is untenable. Yeah, I mean, I just like philosophically, I can't, I don't see where that does anything other than bog down instead of move forward.
Okay, it feels like that's very much at odds with your saying, though, that the rules committee should reflect the diversity of players, because it feels like that's an impossible reconciliation. Then, like
as much as possible. Yes, as much as possible. It's
Right.
desirable, right? Like in my perfect world, there would be.
But what about in the real world? Shouldn't in the real world it do it?
Well,
yeah.
Like we have to live in the world that we're in, though.
Okay.
And we have to do the best we can with what we have.
Okay.
And I think that one of our responsibilities is to cultivate the people who are going to come behind. It's our responsibility to look today and go, yeah, the demographic makeup of the RC is not what's desirable. So how do we work toward making it that way? And one of the things is to find the people that we can help get to the level of qualification to then be able to step into those spots, because we're not going to be here forever. You know, I mean, it's no secret that I might not be here forever, and you have to think about legacy, and the legacy of Commander is extremely important to me, and personally, I on this, I'm not going to speak for the other members of the RC, but when it came to adding these two new people to the RC, one of my own criteria was, are these people that I'm comfortable turning the legacy of Commander over to? And the answer in the case of Olivia and Jim is a resounding yes. And you know, like, that was a super important decision point for me.
Does the rules committee or members of the rules committee or have us any stance on proxying Magic cards?
The rules committee doesn't have an official stance on proxying Magic cards, on proxies at all.
So proxies are okay for me to play with my playgroup?
Yeah, that's your playgroup's decision to make.
Right.
We don't think that there's a positive engagement for us for two reasons. We don't want to tell businesses how to operate. So we don't want to tell local game stores how to run their events, or TOs how to run their events, or even Wizards of the Coast how to do their business. And we don't want to try to tell players how to behave either.
So it's okay. So you don't have any don't use proxies policy. It's okay to use proxies if you and your playgroup think proxies are okay.
That's a playgroup decision. That's definitely not our decision.
Not against proxies.
I have personal thoughts.
Right, but the rules committee is not against proxies.
The rules committee is intentionally null on proxies.
Okay, interesting. Very interesting. What is, would you say, the biggest point of contention right now for the world of Commander and the Rules Committee's relationship to it? What's the biggest point of contention right now?
I hear people say a lot about transparency. So that's kind of one thing. I mean, we've already touched on the diversity thing, and that's certainly the one that I want to work the hardest on. But transparency is a thing that people talk about. I'm not sure that when people ask for transparency, they necessarily understand what they're asking for.
Okay.
They're certainly not going to get the meeting minutes from when the RC sits down and discusses things. The RC, remember earlier I said that we get individual opinions from the CAG, and we want it that way. And CAG members are free to share their personal opinions and to share the feedback that they've given to us. Like there's no enjoinder on them for discussing anything that's not covered by an NDA, right? Obviously, they can't discuss cards that they've seen or whatever, but their opinions and how they've argued to us, free for them to talk about. The rules committee itself operates as a single voice. When we make a decision, it's a decision of the group.
There's no dissenting member. Sort of like with a published statement. So,
correct.
Yes, Scott Larrabee does not publish his dissenting opinion on the banning of Hull Breacher.
Right. We're not quite the Supreme Court. So there's no RBG dissents document.
So how exactly does the Rules Committee listen to the player base? How does the player base communicate what their desires and feelings for the shape and future of Commander is with the Rules Committee?
There are two generally big ways. One is via the CAG, because, again, a significant number of them have a very large following. So they go out and glean information in whatever way they see fit. Like, I don't need Shivam to tell me what the poll said. I want him to take what he found from the poll and filter it through his lens, through his sort of area of expertise, and provide it to us. So via the CAG is one way, and via the RC Discord server is the other. We have a pretty vibrant Discord server. I think Logan told me we just passed 7,000.
Yeah, it's quite large, and I'll include links to it in this video's description. Of course, it's totally free to join the Discord server, and that's where they can talk with all of you. Really.
Yeah, and I was going to say that's kind of the best place to find any of us. I'm usually the one you're more likely to find there. Toby is pretty active as well. Scott and Gavin get there. Now, of course, Jim and Olivia will likely be kind of as active as I am, because they live more in the world of talking to people online. So, I mean, the Discord server, like you said, is free. We have a multitude of channels, most of which are talking about Commander in its various forms. There are other Magic channels. There's a LFG lobby, and then there are off-topic channels. Like we have channels for TV and film and books and print.
So the Discord is the best way that probably is the best system for people letting their voices be heard.
Yeah, there's a format philosophy channel that gets some lively debate that we will pop into quite frequently.
Okay.
I think in the near future, one of the things I want to start doing is more active, like office hours kind of thing, where every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, an RC member will be here in the channel, guaranteed, and talk about whatever issues that you have. Not quite an AMA, but whatever the issues of the day are, and you want to talk about them. Here's direct access. But the Discord server, like, pretty direct to us.
Other than finally deciding to ban a card, what is the last time that the Rules Committee actually changed their mind on a stance?
Changed our mind on a stance?
Yeah.
Well, would you consider getting rid of the mana production rules, changing our mind on a stance?
You tell me.
Would you consider changing the death triggers? If you consider that.
Sure.
So the death triggers was the last thing that we changed. Was the
Yeah.
last, certainly the last rule we
I
changed.
think that meets the criteria.
Yeah, okay.
You had one belief, and then you decided we're going to change our mind on
Yeah.
this belief.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting at is if your answer is we've never changed
No.
our mind on the stance, that's one
No.
thing. So what was the death triggers thing?
So previously, the commander going back to the command zone was a replacement effect. So a commander dying would never hit the graveyard. That's the way that replacement effects work. They replaced an event with a different event. And one of the drivers of this is that a big section of the player base believed that that's the way it worked, that intuitively it made sense for the commander to hit the graveyard first and then go to the command zone. So we looked at that, we talked about it, and probably a year's worth of work to get to someplace that we were happy with changing that. If I remember correctly, it was delayed slightly because of online implementation. Like we wanted, we want the paper game and the online game to be as close as possible to each other. I mean, we know they're not exactly the same animal, but if Wizard says, yeah, that's a great change, can we wait till next quarter so we can program it in? That's not too difficult of an ask.
Okay. I've been told from overwhelming sources, myriad voices in this community, that Leovold, Emissary of Trest, was banned because of a video that I made showing people how degenerate the deck was and encouraging them to build the deck, which led to too many people playing Leovold, it being a toxic thing. Is it true that Tolarian Community College got Leovold banned?
No.
All right. I guess my final question, I was debating...
You don't want to go down that whole line? Okay.
I'm just hoping people will click on the video and it'll get some new views, because guess what? A deck tech on Leovold doesn't get watched that much these days. Thanks for that. It was one of my most popular videos. Now it gets 12 views a year. RC screwing over Tolarian Community College again. Again.
An established position. So that was, your video was like 2 weeks before it got banned?
I don't know, it was very close. And it had been a card that many people said, you specifically, did not recognize how degenerate or bad that commander was. I made the video, and then not long after it was banned, that perhaps there's the feeling that the individual community's voices weren't being heard, but then a loud person with a megaphone got heard might have been where that incorrect line of reasoning came from.
Yeah, no, it was, if something happens, if a card gets banned, it's been talked about for a while. It's probably been talked about for more than one cycle, one quarter, because again, we want to intentionally be slow to pull the trigger on banning things. We'd rather wait and make the right decision than make the wrong decision too fast and have to backtrack. But Leovold, I'll tell you one of the parts of Leovold was that I'll admit that I was a little cool on it. Like I was cool on the idea of how busted it was initially. So I built the deck. Like, this isn't that bad. I built the deck. I was 5 or 6 turns into playing the first game with it at my house with my friends, and I was on the phone. And I don't mean metaphorically. I was on the phone with the rest of the RC saying, this card is so miserable.
It is, or rather it was, because it's gone from Commander now.
Yeah, so that certainly had been in the works. But I get how people could see, if people...
I didn't really believe I had gotten it banned. It was just funny that I heard people suspect that the video played a role.
If people don't understand the process, then I think it's our responsibility to make them understand how that wouldn't be the case. how just one person with a megaphone isn't enough to shame us into doing anything.
I suppose my final question, I was debating actually how to ask this, and you actually did bring it up a little earlier in the interview, but I guess what I'd like to just ask is, as inevitably there will come a time where you are not on the rules committee, what does that look like without Sheldon Menery, and how does Commander and the Rules Committee continue in that future?
Well, I would hope that again we've picked people that will continue the work that we started, right? And like I said earlier, for me personally, I want to hand the keys to the kingdom to people that I trust will do that, and that not will just do it because I asked them to, but sort of believe similarly, right? That for whom the same things that resonate for why Commander exists with me resonate with them. And if I were to retire anytime soon, I would be eminently confident that the new people would fill in for me extremely well. Both Jim and Olivia are articulate, know how to sort of lead communities and be in front of a camera. They're people. Either of them could certainly step into my role as a spokesperson for the RC, and I would not be sad, except for the fact that I wouldn't be doing the work anymore.
Well, Sheldon, thank you so much for coming here today to have this conversation with us. I want to just say at the end here, there are many, many things that I may disagree with you on in regards to Commander and perhaps the RC, but one thing that I do not hesitate on is my gratitude that you gave us this format that has changed so many people's lives for the better. Thank you so much for everything you've done for Commander over the years.
Course.
And for creating EDH.
It's been my distinct pleasure, and thanks for having me. I only regret that I didn't bring excellent socks.
We can't all be perfect.
And I guess I didn't have enough conversations about milk either.
That's a reference to Vince?
Next time on Shuffle Up and Play.
Today, bring your favorite or one of your most favorite Commander decks.
I have brought my dear beloved Grimgrin.
Brought the mimeoplasm. And I brought Noyan Dawn.
And so I ask everyone to take their deck and please pass it to the right.
Of course. I want, this deck to win, specifically because it's mine.
But how would you feel if I killed you with your deck?
What does my commander do?
He's getting a better draw than I've ever gotten out of that deck. What do you want me to do?
The thing is he's good at Magic, and that's usually not the case.
Oh, good. A land that comes into play untapped, unlike every other land in this deck.
I'm like a proud father watching his son take his first steps.
Lady Luck smiles upon a British man.
Yeah.
Don't meow.